In this video, we're going to talk about how we can use Revit to produce detailed drawings. And there's a couple of ways we can do that. One is we can have it detached, or we can have a detail detached and removed from the model, but still part of the Revit project. And the other way is we can work up, for want of a better phrase, a detail based on the actual model and views of the model that we've got. So there's a difference between those two. The fundamental difference is if we create what we call a drafting view detail, that's not connected to the model in any way. So if the model were to change, or elements of the model were to change, for example, the wall thicknesses or depths of foundations, if we were doing a foundation or something like that, it won't have any impact on the detail. It's a piece of paper that is, think of it like a piece of paper that's put in the project file. It's part of the project, but it's been drawn on a separate piece of paper. It's not kind of connected in any way to the three-dimensional model that you create. The other one is, so any changes in any of those elements, such as walls, foundations, windows, whatever it might be, will automatically be reflected in the detail. So we're going to do, the first one we're going to do will be the drafting view. So in order to create that, if we look over in our view menu over here, and you'll see around about halfway along, depending on your sort of screen resolution, you'll see something called the drafting view. And you can see there from the little help tip. Essentially, this creates think of it like a sheet of paper that we can draw on. So this sheet of paper is an infinite size. We're going to draw on it. We are going to draw it 1:1 in here. And I guess if you've used AutoCAD before, this is kind of like the closest you're going to get to having a CAD drawing, just a CAD drawing on its own, standalone in the file. So let's do a drafting view. Click on that. It wants a name, so we're going to give it a name. We are going to work on a foundation detail, so I'm going to call it that. We can choose the scale. We can change this scale after. We are going to draw it 1:1 though. That's kind of really important. We are going to draw this at 1:1. So the scale that we talk about now will have an impact on things like hatching and text size and dimension styles and things like that. But we can change it later. I'm going to keep that at 1:10. Click OK. And what you'll see now, this has created this new view, this foundation detail. This white space is just kind of like a sheet of paper. If you come down here to your project browser, you'll see there's now a subcategory put in here called drafting views. And this one that we've just created is in there. So we're all set up. The drafting view has got properties. You can see things like its scale, it's got a detail level, it's got visibility graphics, and various other things that we haven't looked at this stage, but we can pick up in separate videos. Now, in order to draw on this, we are going to use the annotate menu. So if we click in there, into the annotate menu, you'll see that the first one is all sort of dimensions, but this is the one that we're going to be interested in. Is to start with is this detail. This is where we can draw things called detail lines. So detail lines only exist in the view that they're created in the specific view. So if you draw a detail line in this view, it only exists in this. Similarly, if we draw a detail line on a plan view or a section view, it only exists in that view. That's different to something else that you can create, and you may have seen there are other things here, if we look at that, called model lines. Now, model lines exist in the model, so they will be seen in every view. The one that we're particularly interested in is just the detail line. Now we're going to work up this detail that we've got. If I just drag this onto the screen here, just so we can see that for a second. This is from one of the classes in level 4 of the architectural technology course. So it's just kind of a simple foundation detail. So that's the one that we're going to work up in there. If you're following this from Canvas, you can download this on the Canvas topic. Otherwise, it's a pretty simple detail, and you could always take a screenshot of this to work it up. So let's move that back out of the way and put that over here. Okay, this is a huge sheet of paper that we can work with. We've got a detail line. If we click on the detail line here, click on that, we go into our kind of drafting tools. You'll literally get the context menu. We then get the drafting tools over here. We've seen these before, and we've created things like walls, etc. At the moment, though, these are just going to create lines for us. So based on that sort of foundation of detail that we had, let's go ahead and start to sort of emulate that and draw it. So again, remember, I'm drawing it 1:1. So if you've used AutoCAD before and you draw it 1:1, it's exactly the same. So I'm going to draw this line. Let's make it, say, sort of 2 meters up. Now, at this point as well, maybe just talk about snaps. I've got my snaps turned off here at the moment. You can see it's not snapping to anywhere. I don't have any sort of main lines on. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn those back on before I do anything. So I'll go to the Manage tab, go to Snaps, and uncheck the box. I guess it's a little bit counterintuitive. Normally you would have the box checked to turn snaps on and off or off. It's different in Revit. You check the box to turn snaps off. By default, they are always on. And there's lots of different snaps in here. I think we covered those in sort of the quick start videos. So my snaps are now back on. Let's go back into here. I'm going to draw my line. There you go. Now you can start to see the pink snap markers. So I'm just going to draw an arbitrary value down, hit the escape key. So I've got a line. I now want to offset that. So I'm going to use this offset tool up here. So with the offset tool, I can specify a distance in there. So I'm going to make that 102. So this is going to be the brickwork. I can choose that to be a copy or just offset. I want it to be a copy. If I don't have a copy included in there, it will move this line over by 102. So I'll choose copy. There's 100. Let's make that now 100 for our insulation, and 100 again. That's going to be our block work there. So I've got 3 lines now. What I then want to do down here, and that's they're just simple lines at the moment. So let's look at the bottom. We want to draw the foundation in. The strip is a 600 wide and it's 750 thick strip, the foundation. So what I can do, I go back into my annotate menu again, another line from here. Now there's various different ways you could do this. We could sort of, one way we could draw a line from there to there, go down the middle and offset it. We could calculate the distance and go off a certain distance from here and then come down. There's so many different ways. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to draw just a short line there, and I'm going to draw another detail line from the midpoint of that as the triangle and make that 750 down, and then I'll offset that 300 either side like that. So we get that's my sort of 600 wide. I'll delete that line from there. And then there's another tool I can use here, which is the Trim Extender Corner. Really useful tool. We click that, we click that one, we click that, we click that, and it trims, or extends in this case, to the end point. And then let's just put a line in from the bottom. Like I say, so many different ways. There's no, I guess there's no one way is more correct than the other. As long as you end up with that, you might find a way that's slightly quicker, which saves a few seconds, but the reality is no. As long as you end up with the right geometry, we're okay. So, excuse me, we now have the sort of bones of our wall and the foundation strip. Now let's look at the floor build-up. that we've got on this detail, and we started with, let's go back into our line again in here. Let's do a line across the bottom here. I'm just going to pull it out a certain distance. These are all offsets now, so we're going to offset 150 mil first, which is our hardcore. So we offset that much. Then we've got a blinding layer of 50 mil, so we offset that. Then we've got a damp proof layer, which is just a line. So we're going to leave that for the moment, and I'll draw that in afterwards. Then we're going to go up 100 mil, which is the slab. So 100 mil up there. Then we're going to go an insulation. So we've got 75 mil for the insulation. And then we've got another 75 mil for the screed on top. So I've now built up as well my lines there. They're all offsets, but we built up the lines there for this detail as well. So we're going to let that information in. Now let's turn our attention to adding in some of the detail into this. And it might be that maybe in the past, if you've used sort of CAD packages, we've had to go in and sort of do some offsets to create the brickwork and the mortar joints, etc. But we have some shortcuts. So we have these things called components in Revit. Now let's take a look at these. So there's a drop down, there's a little arrow underneath it, which is the drop down arrow. So we have a detail component and we have repeating detail components. Let's just talk about detail components first on their own. And click on these. Now these are essentially groups, or if you used AutoCAD, they're like blocks. If you haven't, they're like groups of geometry that are bundled together, and you can drop them in, and they're one specific thing. There's a whole range of them built into the. I use the architectural template built into the template here. You can see some of these. So, for example, there is a 100 mil block that we could put in. If I just zoom into it, it's a block. If I look at, let's look at, say, if there's a brick in here, there's a brick with a mortar seam on it, and there's various different things. There's purlins that we can see if we're using those. We can load in more, so there's a load family button there. So we can load in details from anywhere else. Maybe you've downloaded something, maybe a supplier has a specific detail, so you can download it. To put them in, if we just dropped in this block, you just left click and it drops the block in. And then you can put in sort of as many as you want. Then you could maybe put more in like this. I'm just going to delete those for the moment. So they are individual components. We also have this thing called repeating components. This is where it gets really kind of useful for us. So repeating components, if, for example, brickwork is a typical example, we can pull that up and it will automatically create kind of an array of those objects as it goes up. So if we click on repeating component, let's choose a brickwork section there, and if we were to start sort of down here and drag the cursor up, you can see it is automatically putting in the brickwork, and when it's put in, it then hatches it as well, so you can see the brickwork now has gone up. We can do another one, so we can do 100 mil thick block work. These are built into the template. So we might choose to click and drag that up to there. So that's automatically put in the sort of lines, it's automatically put in the hatching, it's done everything, taken care of everything for us. You'll notice just on the brickwork, the brick actually starts here, and it starts from, it doesn't start with a seam at the bottom, it starts straight from the brick, so we could then look to sort of move that up, or start the run from 10 millimeters up, just to give us that that first mortar seam. Another really useful tool is the insulation tool. We can put this in, so we can click and drag that. So we might choose to go, or we can click that. Now let's, before we sort of, I'll put it in first and then you can see how it works. But as we click on there, it gets some properties. So you can change the width and you can also change the bulge. Let me just put one in here. You click and drag it up and it puts that in. If we wanted to change that, say for example we change the bulge to 10, you can see the effect it has on it. So its default value is around about 3, which is okay. So we can click and drag that, and we have grips, so we can start to move that up and down as well. So it always starts from sort of the center, because we have it here. Go to center. If we choose near side, we could go this side or this side. I'll put it in the center because I've got a center point there. I'll drag it up. We'll adjust this in a minute, but we'll drag that up to there. So we've now got our insulation in there as well. So really quick, in terms of putting those detail components in, one thing we haven't done is put the line in for the ground level. So let's just go ahead and put that in, and we'll put that. That 4 courses up for the ground level. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll kind of have our ground level around about here, there, and we'll then choose to start our insulation 150 mm up above that. So we're at something around about this. So now starting to get this detail together. I may have gone a little bit high on these here. We'll trim those back shortly just to get these back down so that we don't have these lines. But once we have that detail up there and those detail elements, actually the lines kind of become redundant, and we can remove those. So eventually we will get rid of those. Okay, one more line to put in before we start talking about hatching. This will just be a line that shows us where the weak fill mix is. So that's going to go from sort of the top of that block just down to somewhere around about there. Okay, so that's the first part. That's creating some of the drafting geometry, which as you can see is pretty simple. It just uses kind of CAD tools. The next thing we need to look at is how we can start to create some hatching, or in Revit terms it calls those regions.